More than 50 years after its release, Blazing Saddles remains one of the boldest comedies Hollywood ever allowed onto a screen. And as it turns out, one it almost didn't. Behind the fart jokes, the punchlines aimed squarely at racism, and the fourth-wall-breaking finale sits a production history full of near disasters, studio panic, and at least one scene so risky that even Mel Brooks himself pulled it before release. To understand why the film landed the way it did, it helps to remember the moment it arrived in. 1974 was not a calm year in America. The Vietnam War had just ended in humiliation. Watergate was unraveling the presidency, and public trust in institutions was at a low point. The civil rights movement had secured major legal victories, but racism was still woven into everyday life. Nowhere more visibly than in the Western, a genre that had spent decades casting white men as heroes and everyone else as scenery. Mel Brooks didn't set out to gently parody that genre. He set out to detonate it. On its surface, Blazing Saddles has a simple setup. A corrupt land developer wants to empty out the town of Rock Ridge so he can seize the land beneath it. So he convinces the governor to install a black sheriff, Bart, assuming the townspeople will be too outraged to stay. Instead, Bart, played by Cleavon Little, turns out to be smarter, calmer, and more capable than anyone around him, and what was meant to be a cruel prank collapses into something closer to a rebellion. Underneath the slapstick was a sharper argument that racism, held up to ridicule, starts to look as absurd as it actually is. Audiences in 1974 weren't used to hearing racial slurs deployed specifically to mock the people using them. They weren't used to bodily function humor in mainstream films. And they certainly weren't used to watching a black hero repeatedly outsmart every white authority figure in town. Brooks didn't write the script alone. Richard Pryor, one of the sharpest and most fearless comedians of the era, co-wrote the film and helped give Bart his edge, a character fully aware of just how ridiculous his situation was. Pryor was actually the first choice to play Bart himself, but the studio declined to insure him because of his legal troubles related to substance use, a decision that arguably reshaped the entire tone of the finished film. Cleavon Little, a Broadway-trained actor with no major film credits at the time, stepped into the role instead, bringing a cooler, more theatrical read to the part than Pryor likely would have. The film spared no one. Politicians, cowboys, old-guard studio executives, and the Western genre's own mythology all took hits. And instead of ending on the dusty streets of Rock Ridge, the movie literally breaks out of its own set, spilling across the Warner Brothers lot, through other soundstages, and into a real theater showing the very film the audience is watching. It's one of the earliest fully self-aware endings in American comedy, a device that would echo forward through decades of films that followed. But buried in all that anarchy is a moment far more people know about than have actually seen. The most talked about lost moment in Blazing Saddles isn't a blooper or an accident. It's a scene Brooks wrote, shot, and ultimately chose not to use. In the finished film, there's a brief, flirtatious bedroom exchange between the seductive lounge singer Lily Von Shtupp, Madeline Kahn, and Sheriff Bart. It's suggestive but tame. The version originally scripted went much further. After a candlelit dinner, the lights go out, and Lily, leaning into her exaggerated German accent, asks Bart whether the rumors about black men are true. Bart's deadpan reply undercuts the whole setup with a joke about mistaken anatomy. In a single exchange, the scene would have combined race, physical stereotype, satire, and innuendo more directly than almost anything else in the film. And according to Brooks, that was exactly the problem. In interviews, including one with Conan O'Brien, Brooks explained that the line crossed from satire into something that risked overwhelming the rest of the film's message. He's since admitted, more than once, that he may have overcorrected out of concern the joke would be misread, at one point saying, half-jokingly, that he simply got scared. That wasn't the only material left on the cutting room floor. Surviving script drafts and crew recollections describe at least two more risque beats built around the same premise. One a double entendre-laden line about Bart removing his gun belt, another an even more physical version of the seduction scene that pushed further into territory most films still wouldn't touch today. In every version, though, the comedy hinged on the same thing: Bart's cool, unbothered reaction undercutting Lily's over-the-top performance. What makes this footnote so interesting isn't just that it exists, It's what it reveals about Brooks's own limits. Even a filmmaker willing to put on-screen flatulence in a major studio picture and mock racism directly by name drew a line somewhere. Whether Blazing Saddles would still be remembered as a classic with those scenes intact, or whether it would have been buried entirely, is impossible to know. But the deleted material shows just how far Brooks was willing to go before pulling back, and how deliberately calculated the film's actual boundary pushing really was. If one scene defines the film's reputation for going where no studio comedy had gone before, it's the campfire scene. Cowboys eating beans around a fire, audibly passing gas, in full and unmistakable sound. It was the first time a major Hollywood release had used the gag so openly, and rather than trim it down, Brooks reportedly added more sound effects in post-production after test audiences laughed so hard they missed the next line of dialogue. The joke wasn't just juvenile, it was pointed. Westerns had spent decades presenting cowboys as stoic, mythic figures. Brooks wanted to show them as they probably actually were, sweaty, gassy men who ate poorly and slept outdoors. Warner Brothers executives reportedly hated the scene, calling it vulgar and pointless. Brooks kept it anyway.